All right, let's just jump right into this. There is a fascinating, almost paradoxical situation unfolding in the Persian Gulf. Picture this. You've got two American supercarrier strike groups parked just outside. Iran's missile factories are basically smoking craters. Their navy's been crippled, and yet the most critical oil shipping lane on the entire planet, the Strait of Hormuz, is effectively closed for business. So the big question is, why? And that right there is the heart of the paradox. I mean, by any normal military math, this fight should be over. The most powerful navy in history has, for all intents and purposes, wiped out 90% of the problem. But it turns out, when your job is to get a massive supertanker through a tiny, dangerous channel, 90% just isn't good enough. The mission isn't complete. And that's because the last 10% of what Iran has left is tailor-made to make life miserable in that strait. We're not talking about big warships, we're talking about simple, nasty stuff. Sea mines, mobile missile launchers they can hide in caves along the coast, and swarms of tiny, fast attack boats. So you don't need a whole fleet to create absolute chaos. You just need a few of the right assets in the right places. This quote just nails it. It's about a different kind of math. You don't have to win a naval battle. You don't have to sink a whole convoy. All you have to do is sink one tanker. One burning ship is all it takes for every insurance underwriter on the planet to declare the strait a war zone. And just like that, shipping stops. Fear becomes the real weapon, and it only takes one shot to work. So what's the Pentagon's brilliant plan to solve this 10% problem? You'd think, hey, send in a third supercarrier, right? Nope. Instead, they're sending in the USS Tripoli, a ship that, believe it or not, a lot of analysts had already written off as a total failure, a design mistake. And this is where the story gets really, really interesting. Why in the world would you send a supposed failure to solve a problem that two of your best ships couldn't?
Okay, so to get why the Tripoli was so controversial, you have to understand what they did to it. A normal amphibious ship has something called a well deck. Think of it like a giant floodable garage in the back that lets it launch landing craft and hovercraft right into the water. It's the whole point of the ship. Well, the designers of the Tripoli, they just got rid of it completely. Critics said it was a ship that forgot how to be amphibious.
And this analogy just hits the nail on the head. Can you imagine designing a brand new pickup truck and just leaving off the truck bed? That's how fundamental this change felt to people. It seemed to completely defy the ship's purpose. And believe me, the outcry from Congress, even from the Marines, was incredibly fierce. But here's the twist. That decision, that thing everyone called a huge mistake, turns out it's the very reason the Tripoli is the perfect ship for this exact job. The vessel's greatest perceived weakness was, in fact, its secret weapon.
So what did they do with all that space they saved by deleting the well deck?
Well, they got a huge amount of internal volume. They used it to double the size of the hangar bay, they packed in way more sophisticated aircraft maintenance gear, and they added massive tanks for jet fuel. Essentially, they made a trade. They gave up the ability to launch boats from the sea, and in exchange, they got overwhelming air power. And the result of that trade-off is just wow. The USS Tripoli can operate up to 20 F-35B Lightning II stealth fighters at the same time. You know, the ones that can take off on a short runway and land like a helicopter. And this isn't just a theory, they've proven it. 20 of the world's most advanced stealth jets on a single ship that isn't even a supercarrier. Now look at the price tag. This is where it gets really interesting. The Tripoli can carry almost half the air wing of a $13 billion supercarrier for about a quarter of the cost. It's what they call a pocket carrier. And in the cold, hard risk calculus of the Pentagon, that makes it, well, more expendable. Losing the Tripoli would be a very bad day. Losing a Ford-class supercarrier would be a national catastrophe. And it's that combination of power and lower risk that lets the Tripoli bring a whole new dimension of warfare to the strait. So let's break down exactly how this one ship and the 2,500 Marines it carries is uniquely equipped to finally solve that stubborn 10% problem. The Tripoli brings three completely new capabilities to this fight that just weren't there before. First, constant close-in air cover. Second, a tactic called vertical envelopment. And third, it's the platform for a radical new strategy called Expeditionary Advanced Base Operations, or EBO for short. Okay, so let's just talk physics for a second. A huge supercarrier, for its own safety, has to stay way out in the ocean, maybe 500 miles away. That means its jets spend 2 hours just flying to and from the strait. They only get about 40 minutes of actual patrol time before they have to head back. This creates gaps,
Hours-long gaps between patrols. Plenty of time for a cheap Iranian drone to get lucky, but since the Tripoli can get much closer, say 100 miles, the flight time drops to less than half an hour round trip. That triples the time its jets can stay on station. The patrol gap shrinks from hours to minutes. That's how you stop the drones. Game over. So the Tripoli takes care of the threat from the sky. Problem solved, right? Well, not so fast. There's another piece to this puzzle. Iran controls 3 fortified islands, Abu Musa and the Greater and Lesser Tums, that sit like permanent, unsinkable fortresses right in the middle of the shipping lane, packed with missile launchers. Air patrols can't dig those out. And this is where that second capability comes in. It's called vertical envelopment. Instead of trying to punch through minefields with landing craft, which the Tripoli doesn't have anyway, it uses its fleet of Osprey and heavy-lift helicopters. The Marines just fly over all the sea-based defenses and land right on top of the islands to take out the missile sites from the inside. They completely bypass the problem.
Okay, so we've got the air covered and a plan for the islands. But what about the water itself? How do you actually control this narrow corridor when it's just too dangerous to park a billion-dollar warship inside it? This leads us to the third and maybe the most game-changing idea the Tripoli brings to the fight. The answer is AABO. This is a brand new concept, and this might be its first real test. Basically, small teams of Marines fly off the Tripoli and set up little temporary pop-up fire bases on deserted islands or friendly coastlines. From there, they can use land-based missile systems like HIMARS to create a kill zone that covers the entire strait, hitting any Iranian fast boat or mine layer that makes a move. Now, when you stack all 3 of these things together, the constant air cover, the island-hopping Marines, and these pop-up missile bases, you create a truly impossible dilemma for Iranian commanders. Suddenly, they're facing an equation that has no right answer. Just put yourself in their shoes for a minute. For 40 years, your entire strategy was built to fight threats from the sea and from the air. Now, out of nowhere, there's a ground threat that can pop up literally anywhere. If you pull your forces together to protect the islands from Marine raids, you leave your whole coastline open to these EIBO teams. If you beef up the coastline, the islands are going to fall. And if you try to defend everything at once, your forces are spread so thin they can't stop anything effectively. It's a perfect strategic checkmate. And that's really the key takeaway here. The arrival of the USS Tripoli and its Marines fundamentally changes the fight by adding a new variable they never planned for, a ground dimension. It's a land-based threat delivered from the sea that their entire defensive strategy just has no answer for. This quote just perfectly captures it. Iran spent decades figuring out the equation for how to defeat American warships and jets. And you know what? They got the right answer for that problem. But the Tripoli didn't just add more ships or planes to the equation. It changed the variable itself by putting boots on the ground. And that brings us right back to the beginning, the USS Tripoli. The ship everyone dismissed as a design flaw, the failed experiment, ends up being the one key that unlocks the whole paradox of the Strait of Hormuz. It's the solution that was hiding in plain sight, an answer that absolutely nobody, least of all Iran, ever saw coming. You know, it's a really powerful lesson in how innovation actually works. The best answer isn't always just a bigger, better version of the last thing. Sometimes it's found in the ideas that everybody else thought was a mistake. The Tripoli solved this problem by introducing a variable everyone else thought was wrong. And it really makes you wonder, for whatever the next global crisis is, what mistakes are being built right now that will turn out to be the answer?